she who waits in the Silong in the mountain town of Bainanag, where fog settles low and mornings come late. There is an old house on the hill with rusted Capiz windows, and a Silong too dark for sunlight, too wide for rats. The people don't look at it when they pass, they just walk faster cross themselves, and never ever speak the name of the woman who once lived there, because they say she still does, even after the fire, even after the body was gone. Her name was Oring. She was a midwife. She was a mancuculam. They say she helped mothers give birth when doctors couldn't, and healed fevers with crushed leaves and warm stones. But when the mayor's child died during childbirth, when 3 bobbies after that were born with red eyes, and no tongues, they blamed her, said she took what didn't belong to her, said she was collecting souls before her own time was up. They came for her at dusk, dragged her into the street, tied her arms with barbed wire, and burned her house with her inside. No screams, only silence, only smoke, only the smell of burned coconut and blood. But the next day someone found a doll by the church door made of hair and teeth, shaped like a baby, its mouth sewn shut with thin copper wire, and its eyes wide open even when no one was looking. Oring was gone. But the curse had roots, and it grew decades later. The house still stood, roof falling in, vines crawling up its walls, and the Silong wide open like a mouth waiting to speak again. Then came Eliza, a journalist from Manila in her late 20s, chasing a story for an online horror magazine. Curious, hungry, stubborn, the kind who never listened when warned. She came to Bainanag to find the truth about Oring, and why no one would say her name. She rented a room in town above the bakery, where old women stared at her like she was already marked. She asked too many questions about the fire, about the midwife, about the dolls. And one day she found a boy with a limp who said he once saw a woman in the Silong. Her legs were backwards, her eyes were black, and she asked him for a name, not his name, someone else's. Eliza went to the house, of course she did. She brought a flashlight, a voice recorder, and salt. The floor creaked, the door groaned, the wind howled low and sick like it knew her already, and the Silong waited like a throat ready to swallow. She stepped inside, and her recorder began to play on its own, a woman humming off key, a lullaby reversed. She called out, no answer, just movement in the dark, like cloth dragging, like feet too light to leave footprints. She dropped salt on the floor, and it turned black. She ran out shaking, but returned the next night, and the next, and the next. She stopped sleeping. Her recordings changed, whispers in languages she didn't understand, her own voice repeating things she never said, dreams of teeth falling from the ceiling and hands reaching from walls. Then the doll appeared on her pillow made of rice husks and skin. Its eyes were 2 burned matches, and its mouth was her own, stitched shut with black thread. She screamed, but no sound came, not even breath. She tried to leave the bakery. Was closed, the jeepneys gone, the road too, fog to follow. She was trapped, and the house on the hill waited that night. She went back to end it, to speak with Oring, to know the truth. The silong was open, something inside breathing. She stepped in, and it shut behind her. Total dark, total silence. Then a voice: you want my name, give me yours. You want my truth, give me your face. You want my ending, give me your blood. Eliza cried, begged, promised, shed, tell the world Oring's story. But Oring laughed, a sound like bones in a basket, and said, you already have now, you will never stop. Eliza woke up outside the house, mouth dry, fingers cracked, eyes burning. She returned to Manila. But she was not the same. Her voice changed. She spoke in riddles. She slept with candles always burning. She started writing without knowing, her hands scratching words into walls, doors, mirrors, words she didn't remember, but that felt old, like prayers, like curses. Her articles went viral. People read them. People died. A boy in Cebu choked on his own teeth. Girl in Davao walked into the sea and never came back. A family in Baguio found a doll with no face under their baby's crib and never spoke again, because Oring's name had been written. And now it moves from mouth to mouth, from screen to screen, from ear to ear. They say, if you hear the story and feel the urge to speak her name, don't just bite your tongue, or she will come from beneath your house, from your silong, and ask if you want to trade places. The clay pot below Luncheon Hill, in the mountain shadow of Luncheon Hill, where the trees sway even without wind, where crows don't caw and dogs refuse to bark. There's a town called Cabactal that people don't speak about out loud, not because they've forgotten it, but because something there remembers them too well. They say the air changes. When you get close, the light dims just a little, the heart beats louder. And once you pass the last mango tree on the trail, back turns to mist, and all that's left is silence. It was once a farming town. Crops grew fast, animals fat, children strong, until the morning people found a clay pot half buried in the rice paddies, cracked but sealed with hardened wax symbols scratched into it, like claws, like teeth, like words unsaid. The elders called for the Babylon, but she had died years ago. So they turned to the oldest woman left, Nanning, easing, blind since childhood, tongue cut by her own hand, and the first to say it wasn't just a pot, it was a prison. She whispered it by drawing letters in ash. Across the floor of the chapel, said the name of the one inside had been scraped from history. Said she was once woman, then something else, then more than that, a mancuculum beyond all curses. They told the children to stay away. But one didn't. His name was Encho, 16, too bold for his bones. He found the pot, he took it home. He cracked the seal to impress his friends. And inside he found something soft, something not dead, but not living either, a ball of hair wrapped around a tooth, still warm, still wet. He laughed the next day, his friend Lito drowned in the water basin, though it was barely ankle-deep the day after that Maris went blind during a noontime nap, and Encho's dog gave birth to kittens with human fingers instead of paws. And that night, the pot was back in the rice paddy sealed again. But the mark it left on Encho was permanent. He heard the voice, first in the rain-soft feminine speaking words he didn't understand, but felt deep inside his chest like hunger and grief and fire. Then he saw her. A woman of ash and shadow standing beneath the tamarind tree. By the school, her face covered in a shawl, her hands wrinkled and bleeding, and her feet wrapped in vines. Her mouth never moved, but her words came anyway, and Encho knew they weren't in his ears, but in his blood. She told him her name was Banga, that she had waited inside the pot for 77 years, that she had been betrayed by a lover, burned by a town, punished by priests, and left to rot in silence. She had cursed the bloodline that imprisoned her. And now she would rise again. Encho ran, but no matter where he hid, she appeared in mirrors, in puddles, in shadows, behind doors. She never touched him, she only stared. And every time her eyes opened a little wider, until they weren't eyes anymore, just black sockets spinning like whirlpools. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping, started speaking in her voice. Even when he didn't know it, his mother found him kneeling in the corner, humming a lullaby no one remembered. And when she asked who he was talking to, he said, "The pot is hungry." People began to disappear quietly one day. The teacher was gone, next the barangay captain, no screams, just slippers left by the river. And the clay pot always returned, after each one, bigger, deeper, darker. Nanang easing warned them. But she was too late. The town had cracked. Something seeped from below the hill, something cold and sticky. And fast. It wrapped around dreams and turned them into nightmares. It whispered names into Bobby's ears and called the dead to sit at dinner tables. The people tried to leave, but the roads curved back, the rivers flowed upward, and their phones showed no signal, only a message. "You opened me, now carry me," they say. Encho was the first to vanish completely. His house remained. But inside was only one thing, a new pot wider than the last. And if you looked closely into it, you saw not your reflection, but someone else staring back, someone who hadn't blinked in decades. The story was told in whispers passed from nearby towns, a warning not to touch what is buried, not to open what is sealed, not to say her name, but you just did, didn't you? Her bones in the firewood in Barangay Masili, where the river runs red after rain, and the trees grow close together like they're whispering secrets. There's a house at the end of the path, with no door, only black cloth hanging where one should be, and a wind chime made of bones clicking in rhythms that don't match the wind. The locals avoid it, say the woman who lived there was not meant to die, that way not without prayer, not without light, not with her heart still beating when the fire started. They say her name was Sable. She was the last of the old ones, a healer. A Mancuculum people came to her with secrets and sickness. They brought salt and eggs and chickens. And she never asked for more than a promise not to speak her name in anger, not to forget to repay what was owed. But someone did. His name was Elias. He took what wasn't his. A charm meant for fertility, but used for greed. He fed it to a woman who bore a child too quickly, too silently. And when the child died, its eyes wide open and its lips sealed tight, the townsfolk pointed to Sable and said it was her fault. They dragged her out of her house at midnight, tied her to the woodpile behind the chapel, and burned her, while the priest read verses with a shaking voice. The flames rose, the smoke spread, and Sable did not scream. She only stared at the sky, as if waiting for someone to come collect her bones. But they didn't turn to ash. They found them unburned beneath the wood, blackened but whole, teeth still clenching, still smiling. And someone took them, buried them near the mango tree behind the school, where the soil never grew grass again. For a while Massily was quiet, until the rains came back stronger than before, and the river flooded with frogs, and children dreamed of hair crawling across their faces. Then things began to vanish. First a girl's shadow left her body and never returned. Then a boy woke up with his tongue gone and a feather under his pillow. Then Elias was found in his house, throat packed with dirt, his eyes boiled, his fingers still pointing toward the river. The villagers remembered Sable, but it was too late, because she had remembered them too. They say she came back not as herself, but through the wind, through the trees, through the firewood under their stoves, and the ash that settled on their rice. They say she walked at night with feet made of mud and leaves, that she whispered names into pots and mirrors, that she braided her hair with baby teeth, and wore a crown made of fish bones and rosaries. The children saw her first always from behind, a woman crouched on the roof combing her hair slowly, even when it rained, and when they looked away for even a second she'd be gone. But their windows would be wet, and the walls would be warm, like someone had pressed a cheek against them. But into the floorboards with a nail. While he slept, his family woke to find the image of a woman with no eyes, and a stitched smile carved beneath their feet. Then the dreams began, the same one shared across the town. A voice calling from the firewood, asking for something back, a promise, a name, a face. No one knew what to do, until Lita returned, Sable's granddaughter. She had left long ago, but something pulled her home. She said she dreamed of her Lola every night, standing in the corner of her room, not moving, not speaking, just breathing like wind through dry leaves. And in the dream she held a bundle wrapped in cloth and whispered, "You will carry this for me." Lita found the old house again, still standing, still watching. She entered without knocking. Inside, she found bowls filled with ash and nails, a mirror covered in blood, and feathers, a pile of teeth arranged in a spiral pointing to the fire pit. And under it the bones, still whole, still black, still warm. She took them, wrapped them in her shirt, carried them to the chapel, lit a candle with her own hair, and prayed not to God, but to her Lola. She said the words she was taught as a child, words that weren't Tagalog or Latin, words made of breath and spit and blood. And the bones cracked, smoke poured from the walls, and the wind chime outside stopped. They say the earth shook only a little, only enough to knock over the cross above the altar, only enough to break the rosaries hung on every door, only enough to remind them she had never left. And now she was whole again. The firewood still burns in Massily, but they never cut trees from behind the school. They never walk alone during dusk. They never speak the word sable unless they mean it kindly. And if you stay there long enough, if you cook your meals the old way, if you leave your pot on the fire too long, you'll smell her, not smoke, not perfume, but soil, salt, ash, and a whisper asking, "Did you keep your promise?"
If you enjoyed this terrifying story, let us know in the comments below. Hit that like button to help us bring more cursed tales and dark legends to life. Don't forget to share this video with your friends, but warn them first. And if you dare, subscribe to this channel, because here in Pinoy Phobia, the horror never ends. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next cursed story, spine-chilling folklore, or true paranormal encounter from the shadows of the Philippines. Remember, some stories are meant to be heard, but others are meant to be warnings. Thank you for watching, and remember, whatever happens, don't look back.